Welcome to Timeline Thursday. This is where we step outside the headlines and look at decision points, past, present, and future. The future is not fate, it's shaped by choices, leadership, restraint, and courage. And tonight, we're not just asking what could happen, but what would create the strongest possible outcome. Welcome. I'm Annabelle, psychic and tarot practitioner for over 35 years. And this is something that I do every single day for my private clients. And if you'd like your own magical reading for yourself or just a bit of direction to find your own yellow brick road, please see the links in the description of this video and on my About page or my sparkly new website, fortunecookiestarot.com. But for now, we're going to do our intro and let you know what's going on in this new series. Be right back. Welcome to a special three-part edition of Time Travel Thursday. This is going to be spread over the next 3 weeks. And if you are a member of the channel, you'll be able to see them right away, all at the same time. But in this series, we're going to convene a council of monarchs, rulers from history who faced betrayal, scandal, exile, rebellious heirs, and threats to the dynastic stability. So across the 3 episodes, we will ask the following. If history's most formidable rulers could advise King Charles today, what would they say? This is not about modern politics. It's about leadership psychology, institution versus individual, legacy versus loyalty. And here's how the series is going to unfold. Today, you are going to get episode 1, which is the Ruthless Kings. So these are leaders who chose power, discipline, and consolidation over sentiment. In episode 2, next week, we're going to have the abdicators and the fallen rulers who hesitated and chose love over duty or lost control of public narratives. Very important, I think, in the modern situation that we have with King Charles. Episode 3 is going to be the survivor monarchs who endured scandal and preserved the institution through patience, strategy, and long vision. So in this video, we're gonna build it up with the uncompromising monarch. So I think all of these individuals are going to advise King Charles fantastically. We're going to get some interesting information out of them. So it's a little bit of channeling. We're going to be using the Lenormand dice because you guys love it. I'm going to preserve that for Time Travel Thursdays. We're also going to be backing it up with some tarot. I've got the This May Hurt tarot at the ready, but I have my standard Rider Waite, and I also have my Hydesville tarot in case we have to go to that major arcana exclusively. So that being said, we are going to start out with rulers that did not blink, Genghis Khan. So a little bit about Genghis Khan while I bring up the Lenormand and card view, make that nice and even for you. So Genghis Khan ruled from 1162 to 1227. He was born as Temujin around 1162. We're not really sure. Proclaimed Genghis Khan in 1206 after uniting the Mongol tribes. He built the largest land empire in history. So notable endeavors. He promoted leaders by loyalty and competence, not bloodline. And I think that this is going to be a little bit important when we talk about William. So we may redo this series when William becomes king or before that if we need to. He also destroyed tribes, Genghis Khan that is, that fractured unity of his people. He instituted strict discipline and codified law, yasa. This is important. Leadership principles for Genghis Khan. Fragmentation equals vulnerability. I think this is going to be really key when we start to look at the relationship of King Charles III and the former Duke of York, Mountbatten Windsor. So his theme was clarity will prevent civil war. So he would likely, intellectually, academically, he would likely advise to draw unmistakable lines between treason, betrayal, and just kind of bad mouthing, slagging somebody up. He would draw really, really clear lines about that. He would define who is inside the circle of power. He would reward loyalty publicly. I think most monarchs want to do that. Ambiguity would not be allowed to linger. So if King Charles III were to ask Genghis Khan, where does ambiguity weaken my authority? Genghis Khan. So it's very interesting. In Lenormand, when we're using these dice, if they come off the mat, we have some interesting things here. And I want to show you, we have the Wise Owl Council that is off the mat way in the past. We also have the snake, which is wise but shifty, a little bit self-involved there. So those things are in King Charles' past. And Genghis Khan would say, dude. I don't think he would say dude. Actually, I think he might say dude, but he would say, you have left your council to advise no king. That your counsel is not being listened to, adhered to, considered. King Charles, in this sense, Genghis Khan would be saying, King Charles, you are really not listening to anyone, and you're letting yourself be the only voice in the room. Up here, we have the ring with the gentleman, which basically is you have to marry the man, the father, and the monarch. So when we look over here, the hard work of the bear, the difficult endeavor, and the sun is bridged by the lily. Now, lilies are gifts. They are surprises that show up, loyalty that shows up here, but not in the sense of true loyalty, but more in the sense of hard workers. That is the bear here. The bear is a hard worker. The bear gives and gives and gives until they can give no more. This is 150% worker. And that is the gift that is right there sitting out in the sunshine. The burden is progress. Progress is more leaning on to the key, moving on. We are moving away from the burden and more toward solution. And here we unfortunately have the book with the mice. The mice in Lenormand are the little things that nibble away at our sovereignty, our individuality, our stability. And so there is information that's going to come out that is going to further trouble this king's reign. So ambiguity, not listening to and I'm just going to move these two guys up here so we know they were off the mat. That's the owl and the snake. Ambiguity is not listening to this good counsel, good and bad advice. And that's why we have the snake and the owls, because there's good and bad advice there. There's advice that is learned and reasonable, and there's also some self-involved advice there, people that are looking to better themselves. So this Genghis Khan is saying, you can't be an autocrat. You have to listen to the people around you. You have good workers right in your realm, right in your face, and you're not listening to them because you're adhering to yourself too much. Easy, easy here. Now, I don't think that Genghis Khan had a huge privy council. I think he probably kept it very select and very fluid. We'll have to do a little bit more research on this. So over here, I think Genghis Khan is giving us a little indication that there's more information out there that we, the regular living plebeians, don't know yet. So interesting. And the burden, letting go of the burden, moving on, is the key to clearing up this weakened authority. So let's do a couple of cards here. Let's see. And since he's speaking in such that this may hurt. So who stands firmly within the inner circle? Who stands firmly there? Dare I flip one card for Princess Anne? Dare I? I think we all know where she stands. The Princess Royale. There she is. 2 of Pentacles. She disagrees with Charles, but she's absolutely in the inner circle. She is one of the voices, I think, that is really an owl kind of voice. I think she is looking to preserve and protect. What about Prince Edward, the Duke of Edinburgh? 7 of Pentacles. He is much more academic about it, standing firmly in the inner circle. We've got all those pentacles there, which are longevity and institution and legacy and all that good stuff. But he's looking in the past. And I think that there's something very, very old fashioned about this particular monarch and the people that he's listening to. He's going back to some very old fashioned ideas. So now let's see who else. Andrew. Is Andrew part of the circle? 3 of Swords. Absolutely not. Absolutely not. How about the Princess of Wales? 3 of Pentacles. She disagrees with some of the old traditions and standards, but I think that she is deferring to the blood royals. What about William? Is William in the inner circle? William is a bit more reckless. Now, I think that this is a very curious thing for Genghis Khan to be saying, because this is radical. This is also conceptually radical. Does Genghis Khan say that the Waleses are excellent successors? Would he consider that? Yes, he thinks it is a new start. It is radical, very passionate, and it would be good for the line. What about Harry? What does Genghis Khan say about Harry being in the inner circle? What does he think about that? All is lost with that boy. And what about Meghan? 4 of Wands. Keep her out of the house. It's in reverse. We don't want her there. Genghis Khan says no, no, no to the Markles. So what will strengthen unity? What would Genghis Khan say to King Charles about strengthening unity? And we've got over here in the distance, don't worry about your legacy. It's the stars all the way off the board. It's way in the future. King Charles has to understand from Genghis Khan that his legacy is almost cemented at this point. It is almost done. There are very few things that he can do that's really going to move the needle on it. People are going to remember what they remember. Here, what strengthens unity, the ones that are standing in the full light are your good luck features. The burden, the key, time. Okay, we've got a lot here, guys. a very, very big cluster. So we've got the moon and the cross. The moon is illusory things, hidden things, and the cross is burdens or blessings. We've got the key on there. The blessings are coming out into the light. Again, like I am getting a very clear sense from Genghis Khan that he's saying, pass the torch, pass the baton. There are good things coming with the next set, with the Prince and Princess of Wales. Up here, we have diverting the road, leaving the anchor, diverting, going down the crossroads. That will lead to prosperity. Now, when we talk about the fish in casual readings for people like you and me, it's usually money. We're going to get some extra stuff, blah, blah, blah. Good things are coming, gifts, whatnot. Here, I think it's the strengthening of that royal line. Genghis Khan definitely is pointing firmly at the lady. Now, we know that this is the Princess of Wales. I know it intuitively. And this is the gift. He knows that she is the decoration that is going to endear the people to the next level of monarchy. So that strengthens unity. I think it's very interesting that Catherine gets the lily, because this is really a home run for the monarchy itself. The legacy is still unfolding with those stars all the way out here in the distance. Way, way, way in the future. The legacy is unfolding. Charles has to understand passing the baton is a good thing. I'm not calling for abdication. I am just saying what Genghis Khan is saying is the best thing. What needs to be clarified immediately? This is going to be our last question for Genghis Khan. What does King Charles need to clarify immediately? We're still using the This May Hurt Tarot. What must be clarified immediately? Judgment. And the Knight of Swords. Clarification of who's in and who's out. That is what needs to be clarified. So Genghis Khan, all together, Genghis Khan, what kind of score are you giving King Charles right now for his leadership at the moment? 8 of Pentacles. It ain't working. It ain't working, King Charles. You got to try a little bit harder. You have to preserve the line. What would Genghis Khan do? 1, 2, he would act recklessly and defiantly. He would break up the triad. So there's no real triad, but he would break up this system of, you know, these second sons that are coming and having all these complaints and coming in with terrible wives and whatnot. He would absolutely break up what's going on. This also is legacy, that 3 of Pentacles, because it's in the traditional tarot, the Rider-Waite, and you can see it here. It's the apprentice and the master working on a masterpiece. So what is going on there is that the legacy does not have to be blood royals. And that rings very, very true with Genghis Khan's philosophy when he was alive and leading. So I thank Genghis Khan for visiting with us today and advising King Charles. I think that that's great. Moving on to one of my favorite monarchs. Oh, what a reign. Ivan the Terrible from 1530 to 1584. We are in my wheelhouse of Russian leaders. Again, I do want to recommend, if you guys want to learn a bit about Russian history, there's a fantastic book called The Icon and the Axe. You can go and get that. It will give you the full-on history from Muscovy all the way. I think it goes all the way to like the 80s or the 90s. I think that just the 80s. I don't think there may be an updated version, but it is a fantastic book, and you're going to learn all the twists and turns that Russian leadership and the Russian country and Soviet Union went through. So there is never a boring part of Russian history. I promise you that. There is never a boring part. So if you're into history, if you want to know a little bit more about Russian history, Icon and the Axe. It's readily available on Amazon. I may even put it in the description of this video. So Ivan the Terrible, born in 1530, he was crowned Tsar in 1547 and the first ruler to take the title Tsar. So he established the Oprichnina, which is from 1565 to 1572, and it centralized terror apparatuses in the country. In 1581, in a fit of passion, the story that is told fairly regularly is that he had struck his son's bride, who I believe was with child at the time, and the son came to say, hey, you're not going to do that. You're not going to, lay hands on my wife, blah, blah, blah. And he struck his son during that argument, and his son later died. This was the heir to the throne. His reign destabilized as a result of that. The succession ushered in Russia's time of troubles, which most people that aren't even Russophiles, they do know about the time of troubles. His leadership principle outside of this is unchecked emotion destroys legacy. His advisory theme, if you will, control your reaction or history will. So he may warn personal grievances must not become public policy. Rage can also damage dynastic continuity, and strength requires composure. I don't think that he thinks that Charles's composure is indicative of strength right now. And we're going to unpack that in just a second. So, Yvonne, is emotion influencing Charles' decisions too much? So we've got luck off the board up in the air, and we have fidelity up in the air. So fidelity, I like that the fidelity is up here because it's a conceptual item for King Charles rather than a true pillar of success. So it's almost like, well, I have to be fair because of blah, blah, blah. So does this apply to Harry or does this apply to the former Duke of York? Who does it apply to? Is it Harry? Harry the Fool? Duke of York? Chariot. He's not moving the Duke of York fast enough. He's not ushering the former Duke of York, Andrew Mountbatten Windsor. He's not ushering him out. He is really tinkering with the assumed approval of the public. He's assuming that everyone's going to understand this is my brother. I need to manage this. So in the future, on the stars, there's the heart. And what this tells me is that emotionality, peace with all, is a luxury that no monarch is given. And Ivan is saying that to King Charles in no uncertain terms, that we can't make everybody happy. Sometimes you have to make people unhappy. The bear, the hard workers, again, he says, are the key. These 110% workers, the ones that are rolling up their sleeves and getting to work, those are the ones that are the key to saving the monarchy. The rats were gifts because they are out in the open. Ivan himself had struggles with boyars and courtiers and those individuals, had trouble with them. As I've said in the intro to this section, there is never a dull part of Russian history. It's one of the reasons I love it so much. And I think he says, your rats are out in the open. You have no excuse. You have the gift of brilliance. And this, I do think that Ivan is looking directly at the Princess Royale. I think he has a lot of respect for her. She has a backbone of steel as far as he's concerned, a backbone of steel. So let's clean that up. Clearly, from our emotional Tsar, he is saying, be careful. You've got to have somebody who doesn't have all that backbone made out of cooked spaghetti. In regard to Harry, I want to focus on Harry here, since Ivan had that terrible misstep with his own heir. What response would be strategic and measured when dealing with Harry? Soon to be Harry Mountbatten Windsor, not Harry Sussex. What does Ivan recommend in terms of response to Harry? He will continue to be an agony, not a difficulty, an agony. He also says separate. Exile. I do think that's exile. Under the surface, 7 of Cups in reverse. He says you're not gaslit here. You are not struggling with a decision. The decision is clear. There is no 4th, 5th, 3rd option. There are no options here. We don't have different scenarios to choose from. It is a decisive action that a decisive king or tsar takes, and we cut off those things that interfere with our reign. What is the suitcase position that Ivan advises King Charles? Be the monarch. Stop muddling your story, your legacy with being a man and being a father. Stop muddling it. If it walks like a duck and quacks like a duck, it's 100% a duck. But I think that Russians would say that differently. If it's a bear and it roars like a bear, then it is a bear and it will probably rip your head off. So let me grab a little bit of my chai here. Yeah, blue chai. So up top, when Charles says that he does not have the power to do blankety blank in terms of Harry, Ivan says, yes, you do. You absolutely have the ability, the option, and the God-given right to do what you need to do. Stop being afraid and do what you need to do before this comes to blows. He does say that. Future outcome. Everyone, your royal family will be happy, but decisive action must be taken. He wants to see King Charles lay this prince low and tell this prince, if you want to leave and run away from home, have at it. Go. We're happier without you. Where does Ivan want Charles to restrain himself? Well, certainly he wants him to stop taking the blows. Over here we have the whip with the coffin. He wants him to stop letting them abuse him, both Andrew and Harry. Stop the conversation. If we do that, then we get this hard work done. We've got bear on bear here. Again, with the bear. We love the bear. So we have this. He wants him. There is this sentiment of weakness. And Ivan says that if King Charles had been born at another time, we would have rolled right over him and we would have taken the country. And that, I think, is a much larger perspective that Charles needs to look at in terms of continuity and safety. Above all, up here, the man is responsible for that legacy again and again and again. And if this monarch won't do it, then maybe the next one will. Maybe the next one will have a bit more dedication to the legacy of the family and the institution rather than the legacy of his own personal profile and that Wikipedia page, or the pages in an encyclopedia if you're really old. Over here, Ivan's concern is that it gets darker before it gets lighter, that we are going from the magnificent reign of Queen Elizabeth into a milquetoast reign of King Charles, and then possibly dimming the lights for curtain up for William and Catherine to reign. And that is his concern, because he says that this is not determined. There is still a lot of action that Charles can take in the moment to make sure that continuity is king. Pun intended. Over here, the ones that have shown their fealty, the ones that have bent the knee and done so with a smile on their face. And if you remember back at the coronation, William was the only one who swore fealty to King Charles. That was a change in the coronation. He was the only one that had to do it. And whether they wrote that in because they didn't want Harry to go up there and make some kind of a gotcha statement or try and, make an overture on the world stage, Ivan says, those that are loyal to you, feel it in your heart, you see it in their eyes, you see it in their dedication to their craft and what they do. So this, he says, who are your ride or dies. I think Ivan would have said ride or die. I think he would have. I know Genghis Khan would have. Let me know in the comments if you think Genghis Khan would have said it or if you think that Ivan would have said it. So, and just before I get to this last bit, I just want to clarify for anyone who is not a Russophile, the Ivan the Terrible in Russian, terrible, and also in historical constructs, terrible does not mean he was awful. There were some awful things that he did do, but terrible was like great and grand and awesome. So I want you to remember that when you refer to Ivan the Terrible, not making any excuses, but that is how that verbiage goes. So over here, the key is the gift and changing of the guard, the changing of the monarchy. And I do think that Ivan would like to see a soft regency. I think he would. Let's ask Ivan. The remedy for this situation: soft regency, abdication, or ride it out. Soft regency, abdication, ride it out. Soft regency, we're already there. We're already doing it. Abdication, that says, yeah, ride it out is going to erode the existing royal family, the standing that they have at the Mo. So if I were to choose, if we had major arcana here, I would jump right on the major arcana, but we want to go to the card, despite it being in reverse, to the one that trumps all. Had to say that. And this trumps all. The King of Swords outranks the Eight of Wands and that Knight of Pentacles. This, Ivan would call for abdication. Not saying that's the right thing to do. That would be Ivan's advice. So, what do you think of Ivan's advice? Let me know in the chat. So moving on to one that you may know a little bit better, Henry VIII. Henry VIII lived from 1491 to 1547. He was born in 1491, obviously, became King of England in 1509. If you didn't know, he was married a few times. He passed the Act of Supremacy in 1534 and broke from Rome for obvious reasons. And he dissolved the monasteries. He executed 2 wives, reorganized religion governance to secure succession. His leadership principles are institutions must evolve to survive. So advisory themes are preserve the crown, even if relationships fracture. Sorry, Anne Boleyn. He would advise protect the succession above sentiment and secure authority through legal mechanisms. So a lot of advice there. And also make decisive structural changes as needed, which we all know about that. And Henry VIII has a vested interest in this. Is the institution, is the British royal family secure? Henry VIII. So we have crossroads. There is, and this is off the board in the past, we have already made a switch. There's already been a timeline change. as far as Henry VIII is concerned. He also thinks that the diversion of the royal family is in place and that the future is changed, but not for the worst entirely. It's not going, we're not going to see the end of the British royal family a la the Russian imperial family or the French royal family. The death is in place. We're watching it. That's what he's saying. We're actually watching the change to the royal family. The burden is progress. The key is to climb up that hill and manage what is already in place. I think that Henry VIII says that the glory of the royal family line is now more so in its history and more so in the preservation, but not the continuity of that history. So honor, don't throw it out. Don't get rid of the castles and the books and the histories. But absolutely progress is key here. What structural reinforcement is necessary? What structural reinforcement is necessary? What does Henry VIII think is necessary for structural reinforcement? He's yelling. I'm going to tell you guys this, like, because this is, I'm reading cards, I'm reading Lenormand, but I am also channeling, and he's yelling. He is angry. He is pounding his fist on the table, a departure from Genghis Khan and Ivan the Terrible, but they don't have a vested interest. This is Henry VIII's royal family. This is his line. So what needs to be reinforced? He is livid, guys. I am going to tell you that. He is livid. The things that the coalitions that are disruptive and are being hidden, that's the structural reinforcement. The secret dealings behind the scenes is what he is not happy about. And I do think that Henry VIII is a Britain for Britons kind of guy. I do think that that is his loudest message here. And if that means that we need to break from the current tradition, the current mindset, so be it. Craft a new future, build it out of the ashes of the old one. And that is the line that came through. Build it upon the ashes of our old world. We'll still have the same morals. Well, I know we're talking about Henry VIII. We're still going to have the same foundations, the same ideals, but we're going to steam forward into a future that is different. What kind of future would Henry VIII like to see? Glory and success, transparency, but also a putting to bed of the old ways of living. So this kind of led over into my next question, which was what action would ensure long-term stability? And I think that Henry VIII agrees with me that the royal family will be slimmed down significantly and created into more of a business model, which will be a family business that's going to be handed down from father to son to daughter to granddaughter, grandson, they're going to train up those individuals not to live as a privileged parakeet in a gilded cage, but more as a educated, hard-working individual who can mix and associate with the public, has an understanding of the public through their education and through their experience with the public, and will be able to lead from an intellectual and educated perspective. Very, very not expected answer from him. I thought he was going to be like, off with their heads. I certainly he's like, get rid of them, get rid of the bad players. But I didn't think he would be quite so progressive. I just didn't. So we are now going to jump over to a leader that I have scant knowledge about, but I thought it was crucial to add this individual in, and it's Shaka Zulu, a Zulu chief. So Shaka Zulu lived from 1787 to 1828, so fairly modern history. Born again around 1787, not an exact date, became Zulu chief in 1816, and he revolutionized military formation and weaponry in his nation, centralized authority aggressively, but was assassinated in 1828 by half-brothers amid internal resentment. Now we're seeing some of that, so we're going to focus on Andrew here. Leadership principles for Shaka Zulu's strength must be balanced with internal cohesion. His advisory theme is beware of internal fractures. So he would caution public authority must be firm, but isolation breeds rebellion. So we don't want to keep the monarch isolated too much. Internal unity would be more critical than external approval. So, and I think this is really interesting to look at King Charles in terms of that. So, what would he advise about the Andrew situation? Oh, we've got storks all the way in the future, way, 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 way in the future. We have the lady up top here. That is Queen Elizabeth. I know that. And we also have the ring off the board here. So Shaka Zulu, I Shaka Zulu these dice and they went all over the place. So let's break it down, kids. So this commitment, we can't be committed. I'm going to move it just onto the board just a little bit. The ring is commitment. We can't be committed to those that have betrayed crown, country, and fidelity. We can't do that. So he is saying you don't have to have the commitment. Half brother, you got to remember, half brother took him out. So up here, the queen is all the way up at the top. Shaka Zulu would say in this case, understood, you made a promise to your mother, but what would your mother say if she saw how this was interfering with your legacy, your reign, and the modern family? Oh my God, Annabelle showed up for Shaka Zulu. Can't even believe it. So much fun to say Shaka Zulu like Annabelle. So here, Shaka Zulu sees the sunset of the British monarchy. I will say that here. The sun is dying, is setting, and that will be the burden. Fidelity and promise to the woman. This, I think, is something that he is critical about as far as Camilla is involved here. I think that fracture of opinion of the public is something that Shaka Zulu would say, you should have just kept good with the wife that everybody liked and done what you needed to do on the side. I don't know if he would have agreed with that. So would he have said, keep Camilla as a hot piece on the side? Nope. Very interesting. Shaka Zulu would say to King Charles, if he were advising him at the time of the breakup with Diana and the whole Camilla Gate thing, he would have said, you locked in. This is your bride. You need to stick with this because you need to have her, Diana, on your side, inside. This is the one that started all of the fracture for your reign. This is where it started. He's not even worried about Andrew. He says your fidelity to your first wife is where you started to interrupt that public view and interfere with the internal cohesiveness. That's his opinion. So did not expect that to happen. Over here, moving on, abdication would be the gift to give to the line. So that's wild. That is wild. So the resentment was coming from his fighting about who his spouse was going to be. That is where it was born and bred. Thank you, Shaka Zulu. We've got more coming from our Zulu chief. So what restores cohesion? I'm going to switch over to the This May Hurt Tarot because Shaka Zulu is speaking the truth. So what restores cohesion? Even though we already saw that he says, move it on out. Move it on out. Get going. What restores cohesion? Page of Pentacles. You got to let go of this reign, dude. Got to let go. Queen of Swords. Move it on out. Move it on out. How does Shaka Zulu feel about a regency? Nine of Wands. A regency would protect the realm. How does he feel about abdication? Seven of Swords. He thinks it's weak. So I think he does not necessarily want King Charles to step down as much as he wants him to step sideways and to bring in that son. Should King Charles lean into the health factor and say, we are going into regency because of my health? The Magician, no, because he thinks that Six of Swords, it's not a solution. It's almost like a non-decision, and it would show weakness. So soft regency, I think, is really the key here, to reign together with his son. Is there anything Shaka Zulu would advise him in terms of his brother, Andrew Mountbatten Windsor, attacking him? Now, I don't think that it's really practical or reasonable for Andrew to take the king out, but he could do it public relations wise. He could do it. He could leak information. So what does Shaka Zulu think in terms of the damage that Andrew could do to King Charles' PR and public perspective? Emperor. Yeah. He's very concerned that Andrew will drop some information that may or may not be true, but seeds enough to sow distrust and more calls for a republic. He knows that Charles is not looking at all of the information. I will say this. He is saying Charles thinks that there's information that's scrubbed, and it's not. It's not. There's still information out there. There's still some footprint and information that he could go ahead and Andrew could just have some of his friends leak a little bit of this, and it would be very disruptive. So some interesting perspective from some of the amazing leaders in the world. So, the Ruthless Kings all seem to agree academically on one thing, and that it's ambiguity and a lack of decisive action will weaken power of the royal family, the king, those in power. And he also says that, or they also say that emotion will destabilize succession. We have to really have our logic and our emotion in two separate places when we are a monarch or leader. Division is going to invite crisis, especially when it's that inner council. And we see that very clearly with Shaka Zulu. Genghis Khan would raise up individuals on merit, not necessarily bloodline. So he wasn't a sucker for, and I did say sucker, he wasn't a sucker for the individuals that were just a laissez-faire kind of prince or a duke or a grand duke, whatever. He would find those good workers, those ones that are dedicated, and he would pull them into the equation and elevate them publicly and show that hard work, dedication does honor reward. Ivan the Terrible shows us that he destroyed the continuity of his personal line and legacy by letting his emotion take over in the moment. Henry VIII says, tear down all the structures. I rewrote it. You can rewrite it too. Get in there. Go do it. So what do you guys think? Which of these ruthless kings resonated most with you? Which do you think had the best advice for the current monarch? Being ruthless does not guarantee survival, but you have to be strategic and ruthless. And a very wise friend of mine here, content creator on YouTube, told me that I have to be ruthless in my quest for success on this platform. And I'm a little ruthless, but I'm nice too. So, in episode 2, we are going to look at some rulers who were not quite so demonstrative and some rulers who hesitated. So I want you to stick around. You're going to see it next week. But if you're a member of this channel, you get to see it right away. So I'm going to drop all 3 episodes at the same time. So if you're a member or you want to become a member, you can watch them all at once and let me know what you think. So next week, we are going to see who chooses love over duty, who lost control of the narrative, and who paid the ultimate price. So I hope you're enjoying this. I hope you're learning something, a little bit about Lenormand, a little bit about tarot, and certainly about some of our historical monarchs and public figures of the past, which is one of my favorite things. I love history. I do a lot of reading. I am a voracious reader, and I'm trying to share some of that with you guys. So I hope that you're enjoying that. Until next week, thank you so much for being here. And I will see you in the future where we talk to leaders of the past. Thanks so much.